Christ almighty! What the fuck's going on out there tonight? Are you hurt? Alright, which one of you bitches shat on my dress?
It's time to delve into yet another interesting, idiosyncratic example of Australian cinema. Pride Month edition. A couple months ago, we talked about Picnic at Hanging Rock, Australia's most popular and well-regarded movie from the film boom. Australia became extremely proud of their film industry, and during the 1970s and 1980s, Australia's film industry boomed, creating a new wave which morphed into the exploitation genre. Stefan Elliott was all over the 1980s boom, working on Australian TV movies and low-budget fare, as an assistant director most of the time, either second or third unit. In 1993, Stefan Elliott got his directorial debut with the film Frauds, an extremely low-budget film starring Phil Collins as a psychotic insurance adjuster who blackmails a couple played by Hugo Weaving and Josephine Burns, who accidentally killed their friend during a bad prank.
She's got nothing to do with it, Roland. Leave her out of it.
Oh, but she's been stealing, Jonathan. And all little girls who steal deserve a good spanking. I gather you're up to something. Where, may I ask, are you?
It's not exactly popular and largely ignored, but was allowed into Cannes in 1993 to compete. At Cannes, while Frauds had been in production, Stefan Elliott and his producer, Stuart Quinn, began to search for producers for a new project. That was tonight's film, The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Hey, let's pack the drag away. You take the luncheon tea, I'll take the ecstasy. Fuck off, you silly queer, I'm getting out of here. A desert holiday, hip, 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 hooray.
Why? He looked all over Cannes for a producer unsuccessfully before finding the British producer Michael Hamlin at Polygram, who got them a deal to co-finance the movie for 2.7 million Australian dollars with the Australian Film Finance Corporation, the government agency in Australia which had also co-financed Frauds. Priscilla stars Hugo Weaving as Tick, who performs in drag as Mitzi Del Bra, a very young Guy Pearce, then a local TV actor mostly, as Adam Whiteley or Felicia Jolly Goodfellow. Guy Pearce was famous in Australia for being on the soap opera Neighbours, and within a couple of years of Priscilla taking off, he'd be fielding calls to Hollywood, starting with LA Confidential. And Terence Stamp as an older transgender woman named Bernadette. None of these actors were the first choices for their roles. The rules set up by the Australian Film Finance Corporation state that only one non-Australian actor would be allowed. The first non-Australian actor cast was Rupert Everett as Tick, with Guy Pearce's soap opera co-star Jason Donovan as Adam. They did not get along and the casting was scrapped. Hugo Weaving was brought in as local talent, as he had worked with Stefan before. For Bernadette, they reached out to Tim Curry, John Cleese, and then Tony Curtis, before casting Terence Stamp as their one non-Aussie actor. Their odyssey begins in Sydney, Australia's most populous city, which had a thriving LGBTQ community. Drag shows have been performed at gay bars in Sydney since the late 1950s, quickly becoming known, at least briefly, as drag capital of the world. The first Sydney cabaret troupe was Les Girls, which in this film's backstory, Bernadette was a member of.
We all sit around mindlessly slagging off that vile stinkhole of a city. But in its own strange way, it takes care of us. I don't know if that ugly wall of suburbia has been put there to stop them getting in or us getting out.
Sydney is a safe space for these queer performers. In 1983, even as many people in Sydney's queer community began to die from AIDS, a lesbian business entrepreneur named Dawn O'Donnell was quickly expanding her gay-lesbian drag bar empire. Buying a long list of venues, including the Imperial Hotel, this is where our three performers are when the movie starts and ends. However, when Tick gets an urgent call from his estranged secret wife,
Tick, darling, it's for you.
Hello.
Ding dong, Avon calling. Howdy, sunshine. Long time no hear.
Where?
Emergency ward A.
Mr. Belrose? Yes?
he enlists his two performing friends to come on a road trip, telling them about a gig in Alice Springs without mentioning the hotel they'll be performing at is owned by his wife. They begin a 1,725 mile or 2,770 kilometer journey to the Northern Territories. As in any country, the more liberal, tolerant city atmosphere is far different from the rugged, remote towns up north. When you look up what Alice Springs is known for online, I kid you not, it just says desert landscapes. They're making this journey on a bus bought for the young, hyperactive, annoying Adam by his mother, who thinks a guy's trip up to the rugged country might help her broke gay son snap out of his sexuality.
Well, I met some nice Swedish tourists called Lars, and I coaxed it out of them for $10,000.
We can't afford it.
Well, that's right. Mummy, maybe a trip to the Outback could help me get over this little phase I'm going through.
He probably names this bus Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, because that's what you name your straight guy bang bus.
I hereby christen this budget Barbie camper Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
The movie takes its time letting us hang out with three of the sassiest queens in that hemisphere. Tensions quickly emerge with everyone, and it delicately allows a split between the cis gay drag queens and a post-op transgender woman who also performs as a lay girl at tense moments. They also find out that Tick is married to a cis woman whose call for help spurred this journey to the hotel she owns. Things get more and more remote and rural as they travel through Broken Hill, on the border of southern Australia, where they face some homophobic abuse, but eventually win the respect of the locals, who then vandalize Priscilla.
Could I please have a stallion tonic, a Bloody Mary, and a lime daiquiri, please?
Well, look what the cat dragged in. What have we got here, eh? A couple of showgirls, have we?
They get stuck in Simpson Desert, where they're rescued by a standoffish but friendly Aboriginal people. This creates a very progressive and interesting sequence where, after seeing an Aboriginal corroboree with song and dance, the drag queens perform I Will Survive, which the Aboriginals love and join in with to dance and play their instruments. These two cultures blend together actually pretty seamlessly. This is directly contrasted with the deeply homophobic and bigoted reaction of the white, non-Aboriginal, rural Australians to the many different scenes. The bus breaks down in a tiny town where a hippie named Bob, an outcast from his hick neighbors, tries to help fix Priscilla. Interestingly, Bob is married to the only character I think is actually pretty dehumanized and strictly played for cheap laughs, a Filipina sex worker whose own form of stage performance is an act where she gets drunk and shoots ping-pong balls from her cooch. To the horror of the drag queens, Bob, played by Terence Stamp's friend Bill Hunter, comes on the rest of the journey with the queens and becomes the new love interest of Bernadette. It's interesting that Terence Stamp, who really steals the show here with a deeply funny and majestic portrayal of an old, fading transgender star, was anxious about the role and brought along a friend as a love interest. Bernadette is relentlessly taunted by the young, flamboyant, and deeply annoying Adam, who both dead names her and misgenders her, but gets a nice punch in the face that shuts his ass up. I think this dynamic, forget all the homosexuality and transgender aspects, is deeply relatable to any highly vocal group of friends that love to talk shit. Priscilla needs to get fixed in the mining town of Cooper Petty. This is where the most violent and harrowing episode of bigotry occurs. A drugged-out Adam trying to antagonize Bob now shows up in drag at Bob's gathering of good old boys. Sorry, good old Aussies, good old mates, good old He gets in a fight with a violent, insecure redneck who assumed at first he was a woman.
Okay, fellas, let's not forget how to treat a lady.
You fucking freak! Hold him down.
This redneck is ready to castrate him before Bob and then his friends save his ass. Something I really respect about this movie, and the writer-director Stefan Elliott would finally publicly come out as a gay man in 2012, though it was known since the 80s. At no point does it try to drive home the bigotry by killing or even severely injuring one of the three leads. This brings us finally to Alice Springs, where Tick's wife introduces him to a young son he's never met. It's not Marion, but Tick, who fears being a drag queen, a queer man, and helping raise a little boy. But Marion is a hardworking lady who needs a goddamn break. Priscilla Queen of the Desert is a rare, shining example of a queer movie that's fun, unserious, and still very much holds up today. It's also able, through three incredibly likable characters who don't take themselves too seriously, cut through a complicated and layered Australian society. From Sydney to the Outback to the Northern Territories. It gives us a slice of Aussie cultural life that's both extremely Australian but also incredibly universal. I think that a good example is that the reactions in Australia and America, where Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, was released, would not only be differently in both countries, but the actual laugh lines in each culture were different. Whereas the producers claimed that the American LGBTQ community pointed to Priscilla as an example of bold queer cinema that could add mainstream acceptance of LGBTQ people, humanizing drag queens and a transgender woman, and leading to more mainstream representation. In Australia, it became the 5th highest grossing Australian, specifically, movie. A symbol of LGBTQ culture was often hailed as a symbol of Australian culture, with audiences laughing at the Aussieisms. An American audience apparently lost it for 10 whole minutes on the Bernadette left her cake out in the rain MacArthur's Park joke. One of the last sequences shows the 3 drag queens.
So what now?
I think I want to go home.
Me too. Well then, let's finish the shows and go home.
Tonight's show is brought to you by Yabiga. A Balkan Rakia spirit, go to yabiga.com to order a bottle tonight. Anyway, before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Also, we are now monetized, so if you have any pressing questions during this live stream, send us a super chat, which helps me keep the show running, and which I am obligated by international law, human rights law, to answer. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/movie night extra. All of our after parties are on there forever. We also have a new Discord and a Letterboxd HQ account, so those are 2 more places to follow along with us. Links are in the description. Okay, let me introduce the panel. Conan Neutron, host of Britonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. J. Andrew World, illustrator, book cover artist, artist for Give Them an Argument, co-host for Movie Night Extravaganza, and Bad Takes. Christina Oakes is streaming on Twitch at Cosmopolitics, twitch.tv/Cosmopolitics. Also recently joined YouTube, she's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Cosmopolitics. Send her some subs on Twitch, and send her a coffee. Renee Rune is the host of the Night Shift podcast with Bonnie Burton and Jenna Hayes, hosts Rune Radio, and is a blogger, writer, poet, and the head of Rune Agency. I, of course, am your young chaser husband who was peroxiding his hair and asphyxiated on the fumes, and your host, Forrest Miller. Well, I guess the whole circus is in town.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Renee, welcome back. You mullet.
You mullet. I love that line. Like, I love it.
I like that she's like, oh, what do we have here? A couple of showgirls. And it's like, but it's like, because she's clearly, I mean, not to use like a very, I guess offensive word, but she has like that old kind of very, I guess butch is the right word. Instead of the other word I was going to use. The very stereotypically butch like feature to her that you can tell everybody else in the bar kind of has had enough of her shit as well. So it's like
right. But she's like kind of like a bit of a queen bee there, like a petty despot or something, and then But what I like about that scene is the delay in the laugh. Like when Terence Stamp takes her down, oh my, it's fantastic. But there's like a delay, and that's such a thing that like that timing is like gone in modern movies. Of just like letting something sit and be awkward for a second. It's either got to be like quote unquote awkward comedy, or it has to be immediately everyone's like laughing. And it's weird that it's a very 90s move. But we didn't think of it then as time. It was just because it was the era of jump cuts. But like, it's a great 90s move.
It's also it's also just like a very common Australian behavior. Like that is a part of our comedy. We love to say shit that's really like fierce or blunt, and then and then everyone goes silent, and that's a part of the part of the comedy. And then it's like boom when it drops. This is like a part of you know.
Yeah.
And we'd call that lady like she'd be like referred to, and you know, not nice, but whatever. That's called a bush pig, right? I mean, I'm dead gonna.
Holy shit!
So yeah, like instead of like what we would say, rather than a butch, it'd be like, you know, she's a bit of a bush pig, like, you know.
And
so
it's
a very like country, so it's a very country, like rural Australian, like kind of slang. So
when he's telling the other guy to fuck off or whatever, the redneck guy that's like stereotypically like I feel like very relatable to like an American audience. He's wearing like the lumberjack kind of shirt almost. He's supposed to be minor, but he's wearing like and he walks up and then Bernadette I think is like, why don't you go fuck off and go get yourself a bush pig or something like that? And I was like, I don't know, because I just assumed he meant like an actual pig. Like
no, it's a bush pig is like it's
an unattractive rural,
kind of rural butchy kind of woman.
Sure.
It's like, you know, but that's kind of like there's a lot of those kind of terms that are sort of endearing but not in Australian slang in general, but like that's her vibe.
It's a fantastic line that Bernadette delivers. Like, what is it? Why don't you just light your tampon and blow your box apart because it's the only bang you're ever gonna get?
Yeah.
No notes.
So
That's good.
So good.
That's very good.
Being delivered by like Terence Stamp, right? Who like
I mean,
like he's known for his like extremely like dry, just like, you know, very like witty and Superman villain-esque delivery at this point. Because that's how his career came back up.
Yeah, he's always like the bad guy and stuff for the most part, which I love.
And still is. Like, I mean, like Guy Pearce like put him in like what the Limey and like I mean, like he's definitely like all over. He's like a hyper masculine type of figure that is not this role, which is what's so great about it, because obviously he puts everything into it, including just like the resting state of glumness.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's something that's like, it's like, oh, wow, that's, and then like when you see that glimmer of, you know, like when they finally like of the many misadventures that they have, and it's like, oh, this one guy actually seems kind of nice, and it's like it makes that like sort of glimmer of hope be like a little mean a lot more, really.
Not to derail the conversation too far out of whack. But last night I went
away from bush pigs. How dare you?
No, last night at 3 a.m. I went down a rabbit hole where E! News was talking about Terence Stamp and Michael Caine, and I guess they were young like Michael Caine's a decade older than he is, but they were like roommates when you know, Terence Stamp was starting out as like a young actor, and after like 10 or 15 years of him getting these great like hot roles because he was like, you know, a young star that everyone wanted. After like those years, he ended up like he got the most brutal fucking, like he started going to people that wanted like a Terence Stamp type, but like younger, you know what I mean? Like that.
We wanted, oh well, Terence Stamp's available. No, we want somebody younger.
And that's when Michael Caine, like the second act of his career, really took off, and he ended up like leaving acting for 10 years, going to India, traveling around, meeting like a yogi or something, and then he's never talked to Michael Caine again. And they were like, we're going in depth to talk about the split and the close friendship between Terence Stamp and Michael Caine on like an E! News thing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to click on this. I want to find out more about this.
Wow.
He thought that Michael Caine had sold out, I guess. Like he started taking more like comical British roles.
I mean, he was Alfred. That's definitely selling out.
Yeah.
I think it's so, I'm just going to brash past that, by the way.
Yes,
like Broken Hill, like apparently when, you know, like in the 90s and earlier, like it was, you know, considered like rural homophobic, you know, the normal kind of thing you would expect. But I guess now they have like an annual drag festival, including like that involves the hotel that they have like basically adopted as like, you know, hey, this happened here and we we love it, and we're owning it. I think that's really cool.
It was such a campy spot in the actual thing, right? Like,
sure.
Like, if you didn't lean into that, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it is the most tacky.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. That's a good point, because that's like how many movies have like taken place there, right? That especially ones that like were kind of surprise hits. Like, I remember when this came out and being like, I was like, what is that? Like, I didn't see it at the time. I took like years to see it, but it was like everybody was talking about it, and then it's like when I saw it, I guess I was almost disappointed the first time, because it had been built up so much. I was like, oh, this is gonna be great, and I was like, oh yeah, it's good. It's good. I enjoyed it, but the thing is it was about representation as much as anything else.
Yeah,
like you just did not see, if you saw a trans character or a character in drag, it was played exclusively for laughs with no humanity of any kind. And usually like laughs were like, check it out, like that level of humor.
Or like Adam Sandler being like, and pointing at like a drag queen, and then being like, I don't know.
Yeah, or it was like some super niche artsy fartsy stuff that I would like
yeah, like I mean, Divine was kind of happening, like a few years before this, and like the John Waters films.
Yeah.
It was definitely something that like wasn't seen in Australia, like, and at all, and especially in particularly those rural areas, it was something not talked about and very taboo. I mean, Broken Hill, even though it has certain things on there, it's still an incredibly homophobic and backward place. Like only just this year, like one of a really like a key LGBT figure was actually almost pretty much run out of Broken Hill due to homophobia and abuse. So like it's still, that rural areas, I'm sure everywhere in the world are just the same, but but it definitely brought things like, I think, into a different space and brought that more representation and in some of those rural areas. And you see that in this film, like particularly with the Indigenous people, which I love, that like they just like, I love that in this film, the people who accept them wholeheartedly without any,
they start jamming on the didgeridoo to Gloria Gaynor. It's great. Yeah.
One of these days Conan's going to be doing like an Australian tour and break down there and like get helped by some Aborigines who end up just playing didgeridoo with him.
Great. I'm in. I'm ready. Let's do it now.
Those are the secret friends.
Exactly. Can you tour? Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to say though, and this is really hacky to say this, but it kind of was funny to me that the Northern Territory, the one of them, in Australia.
How many are there, Forrest? How many?
There's one. I think I was looking at like an American map that was like, oh, these are the, and I was like, wow, there's got to be.
What, the Yukon territories? What map are you looking at? You trying to find gold?
I don't know.
Are you looking at a map of Canada?
I was waiting for the Catawba to export, and I was on my phone doing the thing. So I was flipping between Australian maps.
It's a common mistake, dude.
But so many north. No, but I think it's very funny that the Australian version of like going down south, right? Because like here in the U.S., like you head down to the south and like you get the most backward communities, really. And I like that in Australia, it's like they go north.
You go north.
They're heading north. And they're like,
the thing in Australia is it's not even going north. It's going all directions.
It's just going like 70 miles outside the city. Yeah.
It's not even. It's not just Northern Territory. Like, because Broken Hill, Cooper Pedy, they're not anywhere near Northern Territory. Like it's like completely. Yeah. Think of like a compass, and it's basically an X. Every point goes towards.
Well, I mean, it's how living on either the east or the west coast, you are at least taught to kind of stereotypically feel about the rest of the U.S. too. It's like the second you go inwards towards something that's not a coast, they're like, there's going to be the most homophobic and racist people. And I like that it's very layered in this movie that not everybody they meet is homophobic. Not everybody they meet is backwards. They meet a lot of people like Bob, who apparently is Terence Stamp's friend, and he was feeling scared about joining into them, like, as playing a woman during this movie, and he recruited his Australian friend that he had co-starred with in the past that made him feel safer, I think.
Yeah, which it had to be Australian because Terence Stamp was the one non-Australian they have in the production.
That's crazy, right? I wanted to talk to Renee about that.
That's really wild. Yeah,
we didn't talk about this when we had because Australian Film Finance Corporation also did Picnic at Hanging Rock as one of their early films. But that was, there's only one really British character in that, and it's the little dandy boy that's like, British Timothy Chalamet is how he's dressed as Wonka. So they never really, I don't think they really ever had a question like, who was our one actor going to be. But then you have Frauds and Phil Collins or whatever is like their one British actor. Like, and the only place you can really get in-depth information about that film is that, I mean, it's on Tubi, but Frauds is there's a lot of Phil Collins fan pages.
Yeah,
For him, where he's like, I think this was better than my last role because he doesn't. Yeah. I mean, who's really putting him in that many movies? I guess.
Sure.
No, I love that about Australian film, and I love that about the Australian film industry. We do champion our industry more than almost. I mean, I think almost more than any other country. I'd hate to say we are the main, like one of the biggest ones, but like we. Not only there's that rule is implored, but you also have state, territory, and national funding. Like, so that's 3 lots of funding. You also have a producer offset, which is like they'll cover 50% of that fee. There's also a location offset. Like, there's an incredible amount of funding that goes into any kind of film production. And there's also
New Zealand copied that, right? Like New Zealand copied those structures when they because they're obviously their boom is a couple of decades later than the Australian one.
Well, I mean, I think like the government, because there's like we have like Screen Australia, which is another different body from the film what you call it, I've forgotten now, you just said it, but there's like Screen Australia, there's like a whole bunch
Australian Film Finance Corporation, and then there's a distribution company too.
There's going to be a test, so study up.
Study all these. But so there's all these little and they all work. But like, and then the government gives not only those agencies, but then the government also gives money to those agencies. So like, I think the government gives like somewhere, like I think it's like between 30 and 50 mil, like to Screen Australia alone, like each budget time. So like, there's quite a lot. And then I know that if you're from another country, there's an incentive to give money, and it's still going, I think, up until 2026, 27, I believe, where we're giving like an offset to overseas filmmakers to get them to film in Australia.
That's how The Matrix happened.
Oh, Roadshow Entertainment. They Australia and New Zealand have their own subsidiary distribution company, which is great. You always want to have the distribution chain.
Now, I got a question. I know in Canada they are legally required to play only like a certain amount of Canadian content on CBC and radio and whatnot. Do you have similar rules in Australia?
Yeah. So on radio we do have a rule of you have to play a certain percentage of Australian music talent. Yeah. And I don't know what it is in terms of TV film, but we play a lot anyway.
Well, you look at anybody, like even like Guy Pearce, obviously, like you look at their filmography, and there's like a bunch of stuff in the early times that you've never.
He's as pretty as he is tiresome, says Abby.
He really is. But there's a bunch of stuff that's like like clearly purely Australian content made for Australians by Australians, and and like early in his career, and then obviously like if the few people that make it big, I mean, not few, but like, whoever makes it big in like the Hollywood scene gets to jump over. And then, from then on, it's mostly like American stuff. But like Mel Gibson is a funny example of the opposite of that, because Peter Weir, I think, kind of found him as like a younger actor and put him in Gallipoli. And then after that, he has like permanent residency in Australia now, because they're like, all right, we'll give it to this one guy. That's like their example of like a go-to, Aussie. See, I said it with a Z this time. Like their go-to Aussie American, connection.
Yeah, we have a few of them. We kind of There's like American musicians and and stuff like that as well, who like just become honorary Australians and then they move here and never leave.
Yeah.
I mean, I would. Like, that would be...
Sure.
Yeah, moving that extravaganza, coming to Australia.
Sydney night extravaganza.
We're gonna replace me with a koala bear.
But I found it fascinating that the last time
really talks as much as you.
The last time we had you on, right before we went on our Caterwall trip, good times. We're talking about Cemetery Man, which was another movie, 1994. It came out, And for this movie, the original, they originally wanted Rupert Everett to play the Hugo Weaving role as the one non-Australian actor, and then it's kind of then I don't know if it's then he wouldn't have been able to do Cemetery Man, but I'm guessing like it's instead he went and did that, and then this movie came out. It's kind of a fascinating thing. And then next month obviously we're doing Lord of the Rings, so there's that connection too.
Yes.
Oh right, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Well, yeah, but with Rupert,
all connected people
like Rupert Everett, they wanted that it was going to be like they toyed with the idea of Rupert Everett and Jason Donovan, but apparently they had really bad like charisma. So
I want to know what that entailed, because I've seen like I think it had to have been bad charisma, because the other version of it on Wikipedia was like they didn't get along, and it's like you guys met for like a week. How are you guys already like?
Yeah. Well, there's like two things. It was like
nobody in this movie gets along. Wouldn't that be a plus?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, everyone's like basically cunty to each other the entire time.
That means you love them in Australia.
Yeah, but it's
the cuntier you are, the more you like that person.
Right.
Maybe they're just nice to each other, and they're just like, this is the wrong vibe.
It was literally
maybe that was it. Yeah, it was the other way around. You're right. No, I don't buy it.
Like when me, Conan, and Andy traveled, across the country in Conan's touring van.
Yeah. Everybody packed in a Supernaut, driving through Ohio and all the Indiana and all the terrible states.
Yeah, that's our Broken Hill.
Exactly.
Ohio, the entire state.
Not that much different from Indiana, frankly, except for those highways seem bigger.
But yeah, like that's such a funny thing
in the movie. That's the funny thing. It's because highways in Indiana, they're always like shut down to like two lanes for some reason. Yet nothing ever changes. They always seem anyway. Whatever. It's a really niche.
All of ours
topic.
Just have that's it. One lane, one side. that is how that is.
So I'm from California with like real freeways and stuff, so it's like it's always like, what? How do you consider this a freeway?
Your area. For the rest, we don't, because there's this one long road that goes for 9 hours.
Yeah, like Wyoming is like freeway. Like you take a freeway exit, goes out to a dirt road. Like what is happening here? Like how is that an exit? Where does it go?
So the roadshow, the entertainment Australian, New Zealand, Canada, I guess company. It did distribution in Australia. The one that distributed this. They also did the Australian and New Zealand distribution for like Scanners and the Cronenberg movies.
Oh,
which were also government subsidized, which is kind of cool.
I'm a little fascinated by, well, first of all, Hugo Weaving was already losing his hair at like 34 or whatever. Poor bastard. But he also, like whatever. It's not like it like looks bad or anything. It's like, wow, that hairline is like baffling.
Camera loves him too in this movie.
Oh yeah, he's great.
I'm used to his like Elrond hair.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's got more hair now, which is kind of weird. It's surreal. I was like looking at pictures at the movie, like holding up my iPad next to the TV, just like looking back and forth, going like, "What did they?" It's subtle. It's subtle.
Well, maybe he got like the Elon Musk, where suddenly you have more hair because you got like plugs or something.
Well, we talked about it a bit when we covered all the way back when at LA Confidential and Memento and stuff, that like for a while, like Guy Pearce was like the guy. Like Guy Pearce was like everywhere, and I feel like it started with this because I think he was in like when Neighbors. He was in Neighbors before this, and like
this was his big film role for sure.
Yeah,
and like I remember women just going crazy for him, just like like he was this new hot thing that nobody had ever seen anybody like him before. It was just going crazy for him, and kind of weird that his career just kind of like he had a moment and then that was it.
Yeah. It's
now he does like I was looking at what he's doing. Like he does a lot of TV, I think now, which is
and he's done some really shitty movies, which I've watched a few.
Well, like The King's Speech.
I guess
I got him. No, he was in that one. He was in like Covenant, right?
Yes.
Like he had a brief role in Covenant. That was like the last time I saw the Alien movie. Of course, one time.
I mean, he looks older and a lot more distinguished now. He's got a very different look. He kind of, I feel like he and Brad Pitt have like a weirdly similar thing where it's like they were both young and hot. And now they have like an older kind of hot guy thing going on, but like a very similar one. They have like a stylistically similar.
Yeah.
We were just talking about who gets like the Brad Pitt style, like hot to weird.
It's like me and Conan, Rupert Everett and Brad Pitt.
It's exactly like that. Yes.
1-to-1.
Yeah. Precisely. No, but it's interesting because kind of coming to this after having already seen LA Confidential and having already seen Memento. The first thing I thought of was I was like, oh wow, that's bold for someone who's like a leading man. Like usually like it's you're playing with fire that like, okay, do you want to be in indie movies for forever and that's it? Because mainstream studios won't want to work with you if you end up doing anything remotely like even adjacent to being gay, which is one of the things that's been kind of interesting talking about this month and last year too, of just most of these movies are recent movies.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because for every Desert Hearts that you have out there, like you have plenty of movies that never got made, or they had to compromise the artistic intent to they had to compromise the artistic intent to just get it made, to get the money to do it. And so you'll end up in situations like where you have like something like Rope, right? We talked about that, like where it's like, oh, it's absolutely like, it's very queer coded, but like it's done such a way it's more surreptitious. So to see something so just out there, literally just out there, and especially like representing a community. Okay, first of all, let me just say they're bad drag queens, right? I mean, they're not like, if you've actually seen good drag, like, all right, they're not terrible, but it isn't like exceptional either. Like they're like, it's like, okay, I get it.
Which is a big thing that they focused on, because America obviously wanted to give some kind of notice to Australia for being like, thank you for moving the LGBTQ representation forward during the Oscars. So they gave him, I mean, obviously they can't, the proto version of Donald Trump would get mad if they gave him something like Best Picture, Best Actor, or something like that. They gave him Best Costume Design. And
it won Best Costume Design. That's right. Yeah. Which well earned.
I could pull up different. There's a. I'll do it later, but there's a bunch of clips of we can watch like later on in the thing where they're talking about the costume design, and a big selling point of it is like, we did it like real drag because we didn't have much of a budget, but we did like there's a lot of tape and like kind of
right. It doesn't look perfect. It's sort of, it's meant to like embody like the state where you can live this fantasy. And the audience coming along with it is very important to that. If the audience isn't with you, then you're gonna feel like all the baling wire and duct tape of everything like put together, and that's so intrinsic to that community. It's one of the reasons why even before modern targeting for abhorrent political reasons, it was very difficult for like a drag show to like go on tour. Because you have to know that you're going to be in like literally a safe space, but also just a space where everyone can be along for like the make believe for the show. It's intrinsic to what it is. So it's kind of cool that it is a little more like, if not threadbare, just like not like the perfection of like a Baz Luhrmann or something, where it's like everything, it looks like so glossy, and I don't know, of the many things I dislike about that dude, it's just like, okay, nothing looks like that ever, and this is annoying, and like you need to write a story at some point.
Well, and I think that
but what I was getting at is that but what you didn't see though, and I hadn't seen really movies since, is just see them like interacting with each other, like doing the show. Like you literally didn't see that. And especially I think it's one of the reasons why, like, look, it could have been a much worse movie and probably still would have been popular, because people were just waiting to see that. They were waiting to see that representation.
Yeah. Well, I think like, just to hop on to your exact point, the fact that it was done on like a, pretty threadbare, I think they said something like, of the like 2.7 million, whatever the amount of money was that they made it, like I think like 10 or 15%
mostly went to sequins, actually.
Well, no, so it was like I think it was a $200,000 costume budget, which meant that state funded, they had to actually do it that way, which is the real way that drag queens do it,
right? Because you don't have millions of dollars of funding. Sure.
I feel like the best and this is like a point that we hit a lot, I think the best kind of these things comes out of necessity. Like the best, the smartest moves when it comes to stuff like this, it comes out of like, oh no, there's no other way but to do it like this. Like we can get a bunch of old kind of drag clothes, and we can make everything else. And that is the spirit of drag.
Everyone was so passionately involved in the making of this film as well. Like the crew took on their roles as in crew members, I guess, but like took on those jobs like for free, essentially. So the crew did not get paid until they were paid in the actual what do you call it, like the royalties, I guess, or like the money after the film like actually performed. So they were actually paid later.
I don't know if that's
Yeah, so like a lot of the crew like took really poor or no money took it in residuals just to be able to be involved in the film. And they all, and if you look at like some of the behind the scenes of the film being made, like everybody was all like, there was so many people crammed onto that bus, and like the costumes and like everything, and they were all like stinking fucking hot. Like,
yeah.
Not
very glamorous, right?
No,
exactly.
there was not any glamour. It was it was quite a torturous, like kind of like definitely something if you didn't have passion for, you would struggle, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So this is E! News from 1994 and 1995, which just know it's E! News from 19 like that's, that is
right.
a certain vibe, and it's very funny that this guy does not know that one day he will be camp. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Wow, or maybe fabulous. That's the reaction those elaborate costumes are getting in The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. They were put together with a lot of imagination and a lot of glue. Costume designers Tim Chappell and Lizzie Gardner created the outrageous get-ups. They had a low budget, but they got around that by using some Aussie ingenuity, masking tape, and a glue gun.
Instead of sewing things together, you just glue it together. Yeah. Because it's much faster and cheaper.
It's truly creating.
Yeah.
True creativity, because we don't actually sew things together. We just put it together.
And also, it's more traditional for drag
to be made with masking tape. Yeah.
While the costumes looked good, they were not designed with comfort in mind.
The shoes, they just don't make shoes for men, do they? They don't make women's shoes for men that fit.
I was embarrassed a lot of the time about the clothes because I didn't think, just because they were very cheap, and they weren't sort of really elegant. I had a hard time making my body feel the right shape.
Quite an understatement, according to Chappell, who says Stamp had to endure some 24 uncomfortable outfits.
Each time he wore one, I would say to him, "Don't worry, Terence, I'll fix this one up. It shouldn't be too uncomfortable." And so at the end of the day, take it off and there'd be scratches and red rashes and everything. So every outfit turned out to be just as uncomfortable as the last. And on the last day of shoot, I went up to him and I said, put the last outfit on Terence. And I said, "Terence, don't worry, mate. This is the last uncomfortable outfit you have to wear." And he just turned around and slapped me right across the face.
Oh, for goodness sakes, look at yourself, Mitz. How many times do I have to tell you green is not your colour?
The total costume allowance in the Australian production was only $15,000, which, of course, is a drop in the bucket compared to U.S. films. And it's also something to consider when you think that in just its first weekend here in the United States, in just 7 theaters, it's already made over $200,000.
Unbelievable. Those costumes are great. I can't believe they only spent $15,000.
They're colorful.
Jeez.
I like that he also as
I feel like I would have mocked that mercilessly when it aired, frankly. But that was me. I was always a little bit ahead of the curve.
But I like the aggressively American. He also says Aussie. He's like the Aussie.
Yes, he does. Aussie.
Right.
He's never heard the word before. He's just reading the teleprompter.
just reading the word. Just like Ron Burgundy, right? Just reading the words.
He's also never heard the words drag, Velcro, tape. You know what I mean? Like these are
Don't have to hear the words. I just need to read them.
It's almost like a not like he's way more camp, but there's almost like a Kent Brockman level of mockery that you could do to that guy. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Always has been.
That Garrett orange suit, man.
Well, but it's interesting to see it analyzed in sort of that real time because it was such a phenomenon, and I think there was, and it was mentioned way earlier on in the comments. I didn't even think about it. Tu Wong Fu came out like within a year, and they kind of happen independent of each other.
Yeah.
No, Andy, it's you're wrong. I'm going to snap correct you. It was Priscilla's 94 and Tu Wong Fu's 95.
That's the rare snap correction.
Right, exactly. Look, he's fact checking me. Look. Jesus Christ.
Andy, you didn't show up to the debate last night where you could have done that.
You could have done some good, goddammit. And it's interesting because like I'm thinking about do you remember when there was like Armageddon and like Deep Impact, and there was the two volcano movies here where
there were two volcano movies?
Yes. How do you not know this? How do you not know this?
I probably repressed it because
neither one are very good, by the way. I think
that like end of world.
It's Dante's Peak, and I think the other one's called Volcano, right?
Yes,
because
why
would? But like this happens so much. Where like, oh, I guess we're making movies about this now. Like we're suddenly everybody is like, this is the year we're making meteor movies. This is Volcano and Dante's Peak. Thank you. See, am I the only one who loves volcanoes on this show? Thank you. Both those movies are pretty mid, to be clear, though. But like again, talking about like there being like zero representation of any kind, and then. Some people even like said that like when
100% volcano representation.
Right, exactly. When Tu Wong Fu came out, that it was people were, it's just a ripoff of Priscilla Queen of the Desert. Other than the fact that the plot is completely different. Like what? Because they're in drag?
Yeah.
Like, and the answer is yes. That's exactly why we think that's
small town and country. It's like no, totally no, still not.
Yeah. It's so strange, but it's also it's interesting to see how different the reception was and which one. Like, I feel like this has achieved a kind of a timeless quality, whereas like I feel like the other one is just kind of that one, right?
It's also not to toot my own horn, but like it's an Australian. It's also that Australian like thing that everyone loves, like that Australian charisma, that Australian like. Identity and culture that isn't present anywhere else. Like it's
are you saying John Leguizamo does not have that Australian culture down pat?
Well, I love the fact that, like, even the audiences recognize that in like in America, people are like, wow, it's that Australian drag movie, but like emphasis on the drag part. Then in Australia, and they're like, oh, this is a great Australian movie about us Australians doing Australian things. Like, they happen to be in drag, but like it's nationality first.
We need a patriotic drag film for America.
Well, this is going to be the movie I finally make, where it's the Adventures of Barbara Bush, who is my drag character, Barbara Bush.
There you go. They didn't have to change the name.
So right. I don't know. Someone asked me one day what my drag name would be, and that's what I came up with. So there's. I think it's kind of fascinating in like mainstream, at least American culture. I mean, I don't know if you guys kind of went through the same wave, Renee.
It was a counter snap correction, Stevie. Yes, you're right.
Counter snap.
Yeah, we'll have to have like snap, counter snap. Like one of those yelling head shows.
I don't know how much like American TV you guys get on your TVs, Renee, but like RuPaul's Drag
all
Race,
of it.
They get it all.
Well, I'm sure
RuPaul's Drag Race does.
Has television reached you down in Australia yet, or is that still on the way?
No.
Well, I know it's a show on like VH1, right? Like it's not.
We sent a kangaroo with a cable box to you. So
it's American reality TV on like VH1. You know what I mean? Like it's not exactly like they weren't putting it on. I think that's the channel. They're not exactly putting it on like our top. It's not like it's CNN International. It's time for the Drag Race.
It's on our. It is on our main like kind of channels. Yeah, but yeah, RuPaul's Drag Race has always been incredibly popular here. Like they've done a RuPaul Australian version, I think twice now, maybe.
That's
like
awesome.
So, yeah.
I think that's the how cheaply or not cheaply or how much work gets put into the costumes. Like RuPaul's kind of enlightened audiences to being like, look, like this is like an actual thing that we kind of compete over. Like
the craft behind it and how there's a culture behind it that goes beyond what you just see, but like
the makeup is
the maker aspect of it, right? Like that. Yeah. Sorry, Renee, what were you saying?
No, I was just saying, and like the makeup side of it blows my mind. Like on RuPaul's, like I'm just like the fuck, like just like transforming, like it's insane.
Well, because it's so like it's cartoonish, but in the right way, right? So it's like one of those things where it's like what the dividing line on that is so interesting because it's like okay, it like one step more this way or one step more that way, and this doesn't work.
Yeah.
So obviously that's art, right? I mean that's.
And in
a nutshell,
I'm fascinated by the fact that even among like the drag community, right, like they can't really exactly have they don't have a full like there's a spectrum, and Andy and I kind of talked about this term, when we did Tangerine, but the term fish, which means like, it's a drag performer that looks like, a cis, woman, like in the most feminized possible way. Or, in Tangerine, it was just a woman, a cis woman. But like, and then there's also like the clown part of it. And I remember when we were doing this documentary that I did in college, that I like, they talked about clownfish, which was when you put that clown kind of like over the top makeup style and the fish, like, the feminized style together. And like, there's all these different categories of drag that go deeper than really, I mean, it's a movie style kind of thing. Cause you can have subcategories on subcategories on subcategories of people being like, no, this is the way to do drag. You do it like this. Like a lot of people do like horror drag, which is over the top to the point of like, sometimes you don't even see the actual feminized part of it anymore. It's just somebody's putting on like a horror show in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, this was like, in Australia, I guess because there was not, like you mentioned, I think earlier to me about the drag scene coming out of Sydney, but it was like this film did get like quite a bit of, flack for certain parts within the film, but I feel like you can't when you're looking at drag queens, and not so much as much now, but I think looking into the past, especially in Australia, a lot of drag culture was very much centered around like very old school patriarchal kind of feminine roles, like things that women try very hard to reject so that we can move forward in this world.
Like look at like all of John Cleese's, if we're calling it drag, and Monty Python is all very much coming out of this is patriarchal.
I would call it drag, but I would call it the most
heteronormative. There we go.
Sexualized version of drag.
With zero sex appeal of any kind. Yeah, but it was always like very much there was like harridans or shrews, like very much like that sort of come from that misogynistic stand, which hilarious. Don't get me wrong, but like also just like, oh, okay, you're just doing that thing.
And we also have the tradition of the minstrel show too in this country that has a drag element.
The minstrel show or minstrel show? Because the minstrel show is an entirely different kind of show, my friend. And people do pay for it, I'm sure.
I don't even want to touch that one. I'll plug it right back up again.
That's after the. That's after the ping pong balls. Thank you.
Oh my god! I just had a flash to Stephen King's Carrie, like all the girls.
Plug it up. Oh my god! Yeah, that's right, Carrie. Yeah.
No, but I mean, it goes. Minstrel shows are now.
I kind of railroaded Andy's point because I literally thought he said menstrual show. So.
So did I. I thought he was. So I was just like. Andy's going on one of his things.
So I think we should let him talk about whatever the Sam Hill was he wanted to talk about. But
I don't know anymore.
Okay, fair enough. I mean,
I think jumping off what Andy's point was going to be.
I think what Andy World meant to say was
no, but so it goes further than that to Shakespearean era theater and like women literally not being allowed to play.
Oh yeah, kabuki too, right?
Yeah,
same thing.
If you went on stage doing that, they'd be like, "Get out of here, you fucking whore!" Like, you know what I mean? Push you off stage. Like only men were allowed.
We'll let you know if we need to make a baby. Yeah.
And because of that, right? Like drag definitely has roots in like that old theatrical style, which is kind of transformed into cabaret. Which I like that. I like that they make a big deal in this movie specifically about the cabaret roots of drag in Australia.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, and also some of that harkens back to what we were talking about with Becky earlier this week about Carol. That even like as far back as the 50s, right? There's like long lists of like things that like women couldn't do. Like vote, serve on a jury, have a credit card, et cetera, et cetera. And like that wasn't that they could do, but that wasn't that long ago. If you stop and think about it, so think about that just in terms of from a feminist perspective, let alone for including any of the other initials in the LBQ,
100%.
TIA, XYZ, ABC.
This was like the first, like I guess, foray that was especially on such a worldwide stage. For Australia, like to be able to, dip its feet into, what we had, and it started the beginning, I think, of like what then became, the actual evolution of drag in this country, and then expanding it to all the LGBTQIA plus, etc. Like it became more than just that you know, men in dresses pretending to be old school 50s type women. You know what I mean? Like it actually became an art form in itself, and really became something that evolved into an incredible, you know, creative outlet for many, many people. But I think that's where I think in a lot of queer film and film that centers around drag characters and things, it kind of, you know, there is that element of misogyny, of sexism, of even the elements of racism, because some of it doesn't mean the movie itself is racist or sexist or misogynist. It's simply showing a fact. You know what I mean?
Reflection of that culture, sure.
Yeah, it's a reflection of that, and I think that is where a lot of people kind of, you know, when you look at reviews on this film, there's a lot of weird diatribes from across different, you know, people in society on what they loved and hated about this film. And I think, and the common ones are the sexism and, you know, the kind of patriarchal stuff, and obviously the racism and the way the female characters.
Yeah, the racism stand, and we could talk about that in like
we should address that, but we don't need to derail this conversation to do that.
No, later,
But I think you're right, because like, you know, there's gonna be people in Melbourne are gonna react to it much different than people in Coolgardie, you know. Like it's like it's gonna be a different world to them, in the same way that, like, you know, where I grew up is like wildly different than, you know, Los Angeles or New York or San Francisco, and to the point that like I'd escape like a, you know, like a prisoner in a prison break to get out of there, as do a lot of people. And especially like, look, I'm a straight white cis dude, and I could only imagine, as I've told on this very show, I was coming out from a movie on a date with a girl. 5 dudes shirtless in the back of a truck yelled "queer" to me. I was like,
yeah,
I'm on a date with a girl. Clearly, you're a bunch of shirtless dudes in the back of a truck together. I want you to stop and think about this. And it was not lost on me. But I had lots of friends that, you know, were gay and that were lesbians and that were like all across. And it's like, oh my God, like anyone that downplays the importance of that kind of just seeing it represented. And again, seeing it represented as these flawed people. They all kind of suck in different ways. As does everybody. As do I. As does everyone on this panel. You know.
I wanted to bring up. I don't know if I've even lived enough to totally suck yet, but
well, not everyone totally sucks though. But you know what I mean. Where people are flawed into these.
There are some people who do
I'm
totally
kidding.
suck.
I had something I wanted to.
There's usually something redeemed. Maybe they're nice to their pet. Who knows?
I wanted to.
Well, Hitler did kill himself.
Yeah. Well, so there's.
All right, there you go. Needed to tag it for some reason, and you did. Great, congratulations.
No, I think that it's kind of fascinating, right? Like, there's elements of this movie I think that you could point out and be like, you know, there's misogynistic element, like especially the real hard toke of the fucking, you know, like Filipino sex worker lady. But
yeah, we do need to talk about that.
At the same time, I like going around it for a little bit, but
I know, yeah, it's fine if we get in that hour too.
Room, you know,
yeah. It's
but I do like that I do like that Tick's wife, right, that married him knowing that he was at least a drag queen. I don't know if she knew totally that he was.
Like, she seems kind of like into it almost, right? Like they're like talking about it as like, oh yeah, this is who you are. I know. And like, we don't have a romantic relationship anymore, but it hasn't changed like this connection that we clearly have, and my interest in you and the things that you are a part of.
But like
it's very low key, actually, kind of one of the coolest parts of the movie, because you spend the entire movie being like, oh, what's it going to be like? Is it going to be like some exploitative situation or adversarial?
It's the mullet lady.
Right.
It took so long to get here. What are you, a bunch of showgirls?
Right.
I do really. I like the fact that, like, as you're saying, like, you were hitting it perfectly with, and then I interrupted, but you were hitting it perfectly. Everybody in the movie is a fucking piece of shit, like, in their own kind of way.
In their own way,
right? Like you know,
human beings are inherently flawed.
Tick runs away from his wife after their money runs out. Her bank account runs out, presumably.
Yeah. After their money runs out, exactly.
What a little ding-a-ling.
He takes her ring. Like, oh, I like your ring better, and then, you know, dips with her ring. And is like, yeah, we're still married, but I'm gonna go find myself as a drag queen in Sydney. While she has a kid, raises the kid up to like a certain age. She's kind of the man in that relationship, right? Like because of the fact that she's taking care of the kid. She's a business owner, a small business owner. She has her Alice Springs thing. She can't get into a relationship with somebody else. She's actually has her own at least experimentation with women. Like it's kind of a fascinating story where you realize like he is kind of like a flighty young woman in some ways or something. Like when you hear about those kinds of stories, right? Like he's kind of taking on like the flighty aspect of like, oh, I'm I'm the bride that just wanted your money and ran away. But it's the roles are reversed where she's like, I'm holding down our son and taking care of him, and you're kind of just flighting around, whoring around, or not. Well, probably not really whoring around because apparently he doesn't get very
whoring around. Wow, yeah.
Oh. No, but he's like his dance card was not very full up, but presumably he wants to find himself in his like sexuality and all that stuff, and kind of just leaves her behind. And like that is a gender role reversal in a way of kind of a dark story that we see a lot.
Right, and it turns out it's dealt with very humanistically. Like even like when he's terror stricken about basically showing his kid who he is, right? And it turns out there's nothing to fear.
Yeah.
And the kid takes it all in stride.
It turns out the kid is a lot like Adam, which I think is his own set of concerns.
Yeah. I mean,
he's a sweet Adam.
Which I've known people like Adam. I mean, it's sort of like, all right, we get it. We fucking get it.
There's always one person that's really like in any kind of like one person's really over the top and kind of annoying, and it's like almost like the ADHD hyperactivity didn't leave them when they turned into an adult. But at the same time, it's like Adam's presumably he's a young. I mean, there's a big difference between Bernadette, who's like a trans woman, and Adam, who's like a young. His parents seem to be rich, or at least his mom seems to be rich.
He seems to come from some degree of privilege.
He's like a very handsome young cis guy who happens to be gay but can turn it on and off, can turn the what do you call the like the there's a word like code switching, I guess is the word. Like you could turn that on and off, based on where you are, and he's kind of acting out because of a thing that a lot of people act out in, which is like, oh, I'm rebelling against my parents' middle class sensibilities at the same time as exploring his own sexuality.
At the same time as giving Bernadette grief and dead naming Bernadette constantly too.
Yeah,
like, dude, come on.
And he gets
he
gets his shit rocked into
and that's probably the expectation when the movie starts is like that's what the entire thing's gonna be. It's gonna be like wake and fright with dresses.
Yeah,
but it's not. I mean, luckily.
I feel like a cool tidbit as well is that Adam's mom is played by a really iconic movie like film reviewer here called Margaret Pomerantz. So and they do like mostly Margaret and David was the name of their show, and they just do basically just indie films majority of the time. Only cool. But yeah, like she like petitioned to have oh my god, one of those Larry Clark films. I forget which one it was, but they were trying to ban it here, and she was like one of the big like protesters and stuff against the government to try and let them have it. But like, yeah, she's like a super iconic, film person. So there's kind of a lot of people like that involved in this film.
I can't remember what movie we were talking about at one point, but there was a thing before it when we were talking about a certain like a horror movie. I can't remember which horror movie. It was like kind of a lower budget one. And there was this video clip of like Margaret Thatcher in England, and it was like Margaret Thatcher turns against like the naughty list or like the forbidden naughties or something as a list of movies that in.
Oh yeah, that's a really stupid name. Doctor Who was on it.
Yeah, so there was like a list of things.
Video nasties. That's it. Video nasties.
The video nasties. Yeah. So the first thing
I thought you said neo nasties at first, which I was like, oh, that's good. And then I was like, oh no, video nasties is bad.
That's the neo nasties. That's our drag.
The neo-nasty sounds like a great drag queen name. Yeah, absolutely.
No, but I feel like
into it. Yeah.
It's fascinating to me that there's certain like iconic figures like Margaret Thatcher. I mean, iconic in a bad way, but iconic in that you could satirize somebody like Margaret Thatcher in drag very easily. I feel like that. Yeah. That's the kind of, like.
She almost already looked like she was.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's terrible, but fuck her.
She was doing the video nasties.
Exactly.
Exactly. I think there's an interesting like that, but that's another element of like that satirization, right? Like as this kind of conservative culture comes back, and that actual 50s culture comes back, it is a potent force to be able to fight it with something. At the same time as cis women also fighting to get themselves past there, and then you wonder how much that culture war push and pull actually helps that goal. So there's like all these different intersectional goals. I think that it's kind of interesting to look at how different things affect them. I mean, the Aboriginal scene in this, which I really love, is like a perfect example of like cultural, like that, like the Aboriginal culture in this at least, and the drag culture meshed so well together in that instant.
Yeah, and in the closing scene, the artwork in the background is Aboriginal paintings.
Yeah, it's almost because they're looking at like, and I think the director mentioned sort of that like, you know, the idea for the film's like spurred out of the idea of he was walking down to King's Cross, which is, you know, a very, very famous like suburb in Sydney, where basically you go for all your drag shows, all your like sex stuff, drug stuff. Like
yeah,
that's
where you go.
Yeah, you don't like find, you know, there's nothing that's going to frighten, you know, when you go into King's Cross, you know what you're going to King's Cross for, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, and it was a very wild time in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And like, yeah, you kind of see that, I guess, yeah. But then, so he was like, you know, it was in the morning. It was after a super long night out, and I was just walking through King's Cross, and then saw like, you know, all these feathers and things like from, you know, the drag night that had just happened, like, you know, and everyone. And he's like, there was sort of this really weird alien feeling of like walking down a street, and there's all these weird foreign like costume bits all over the place, and he was kind of like, wanted to see what it would be like to take something that, you know, was already seen as kind of alien and put it in a more alien environment, even more so than it was. And so that was what sort of his idea about putting drag queens out in the desert was sort of came from. And but I think that, you know, in that sense,
it's a fish out of water, right? Like it's like that old thing. And how many great movies?
Yeah, and then you have Indigenous people who obviously, you know, you put two things that are weirdly seen as alien in a space together, and they're both, you know, they both are so accepting of each other, and there's absolutely nothing out of whack. But the rest of the society has a real problem with both of those groups. So it's like, you know,
I mean, which ends up being kind of fascinating and a lot of work on whether it's gender studies or like queer studies or any of these like categories, right? Like a lot of times they go back and think about the fact that in either Indigenous communities, tribal communities, there was a lot less of a rigorous like set gender role kind of thing in different communities. So like it makes a lot of sense that this kind of a corroboree, like that kind of tribal meeting, if these drag queens crashed it, like there might be more of a spark between, you know, those two communities than like a you know, cis hetero like normative white community that has these very middle. I mean, I'll keep going back to like middle class sensibilities, like.
Yeah, and it's also about that, like, you know, that like kind of inherent sense of like with the kind of that cis, you know, heteronormative kind of old school roles, everything is immediately sexualized. That's not the case when you're looking, you know, like an Indigenous, like that's not a part of their culture to immediately see someone and see them as a sexual object and, you know, kind of objectify someone. Whereas like you put drag queens right next to cis hetero white men who all they think about is dicks and tits. Like they're straight up, like, you know what I mean? They're just like immediately there's going to be like a confliction of like people who are very anti, people who are very like for. There's no kind of, you know what I mean?
Sure. Like, and as much as there was a rich tradition of it, you know, when Bing Crosby and Bob Hope were doing the Road to movies, they weren't going to maybe get killed for being who they are when they go. That's the difference, and that's what made this like, unique and interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I mean, that's not the only thing that was unique and interesting, but like that's from the perspective of like the rich tradition of road movies. Know, that's what made that unique.
Yeah, well, even that scene, the scene with like it kind of. I only thought about this last night when I was rewatching. It was like the scene with Adam, obviously, when they're in Cooper Pedy, and like that horrible scene with them, like kind of speaking to him and then chasing and all of that. Like it actually kind of slightly, I was like, oh, it's almost like a drag queen gay scene similar to like Thelma and Louise scene that happens. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of, like that very like volatile, frightening situation where you find yourself isolated, you know, and you know, there is that sexual element that is like becomes very frightening and violent.
And there's a power dynamic that at play, and again, it could go very dark very quickly. Yeah.
It's like a pack. It's like a pack mentality too, right? Like you can tell that guy's kind of like in that. I mean, it's not like scientific or anything, but like
that guy seems like a real straight shooter to me. So
he's kind of. It seems like he's more of the alpha of that pack, and then he's the one that walks up, swaggers up to like the first woman they've seen all night after their fucking night of just drinking beers with the dudes, and he's like, I could show you the sights, like hitting on her, and then seeing the bicep and putting it in his head, like his lizard brain, the connection, like, oh, that's not a woman, that's actually a man. Then he has to show, like, his anger becomes performative for his entire group of people around him, that he has to show, well, I wouldn't have sex with no drag queen, like, and that spurs that anger, it's like the fuck to fight ratio. And then even the things he says is like like, how about a fuck? And he's like grabbing his dick in front of them.
Yeah.
So like,
it's really just grotesque. On a side point for anyone watching, and you guys too, because I think you probably would enjoy it. There is a very disturbing movie documentary called The Coolgardie, like the Hotel Coolgardie. 2016, and that is pretty much shows you it's in a mining town.
That's why I tossed the Coolgardie reference in earlier, because I was thinking about that movie.
So like that movie, it's a real documentary, but it's like two European backpackers. This town in Coolgardie.
It's like outside Perth, right? Like it's outside, really outside Perth.
Yeah, so it's super rural outside of Perth. It's a mining town, basically no women, and like. What they do is they hire like 2 female backpackers from international backpackers to work there for a 3-month period. And then when that finishes, they go home, they get another 2, blah, blah, blah. But this exact behavior, you see it in real time happening, and just to women, not even drag queens, just women. So imagine and I think the people who find it hard to understand, like kind of, or don't quite get it, like that film would really show you that kind of really toxic Australian masculinity and that kind of small town kind of views that has, and how that
it's almost like if you've ever had a cat and had like a bird cage or like an aquarium or something then it's basically like that, where they're just like patrolling and like around all the time, even when they're not doing anything odious. It's like, you're just around being like low-key
you're just living, like you're just
exactly.
You're like living, you're like just sitting and having eating your dinner, and they're all like, all of them are like sexualizing and like they're all fighting like full on, like it's absolutely horrifying, and like it would be traumatic. I would have lasted 2 days. I would have been like,
I would head for the hills. Yeah,
there's no way I would have lasted as long as they lasted. But like, yeah, definitely.
I enjoyed the documentary the whole time. I was like, get the fuck out of there. What are you doing? Get out of there.
All the way through, I was like, oh, and then just the things, the behaviors in there of some of the men are so upsetting that you're just like, how? Someone take this guy to a psychiatrist now. Like, what the fuck? And the way they're trying to flirt and the way that they're trying to like assert their like, I'm on the prowl and stuff is really quite disturbing.
No, it's real rough. There's also, they made a narrative film about it last year. The only person I know who saw it was Zach Marsh, and he hated it. He like went out of his way to like say how much he hated it, which is, he's a big lover of movies, so that's kind of
that's the first movie I've ever
it must really be terrible. He was super mad at it and had never seen the documentary, and he just was like, it's really bad. But
the documentary makes you really mad because it's real, and these girls are really affected, and it's just like, what the fuck? And and also you're just sitting there going, does anyone in this like community, like none of them think that what they're doing, saying anything remotely wrong in any way?
It's normal behavior. This is an average Tuesday for them. Yeah, like there's no critical thinking of any kind towards their own behavior. Like it's hard to watch, but it's a compelling watch because
there's like a whole town of people like Wolf Creek, except without the murders.
Well, yeah, I guess kind of, but you know, you're talking about a very remote town with a very.
I'm gonna check the population of Wolf Creek, but I think Coolgardie actually has less.
Coolgardie is very less, yeah.
Yeah, Coolgardie is like a couple hundred or something.
178.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they really haven't interacted with anybody. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the people who live and work there, like they just work in the mines like bazillion hours a day. You know what I mean?
They spend all their time drinking when they're not doing that.
They just finish. They go straight
to the pub.
Straight to the pub. Sit there all night.
The mines also famously give you, I would say brain damage, to say the least. Like the chemicals.
I don't think these fellas needed any help.
I think they had the damage before they went in. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
So
I'm not gonna watch. It's the Royal Hotel is the name of the name. I'm not gonna watch that, the Hotel Coolgardie documentary is, again, if you're in the mood for it, it's worth watching, but it's kind of a tough watch because
Wolf Creek's probably a better movie to watch, anyways. Than Hotel.
But
anyway,
so there's a documentary that they made about the making of Priscilla Queen of the Desert, and a lot of it hinges on talking through Australian culture through the chronology. I find it really interesting. I only watched a little bit of it last night, and I grabbed a second of it, but I find it interesting that right in the middle of when Australia is having this big pro gay women, this throws another kind of huge wrench into it that they talk about in this. Which is like the AIDS crisis hitting Australia and people really freaking out about that. Like even when their bus gets vandalized, it's like go home AIDS fuckers or whatever. And it's right in the middle of a moment where they the drag community and the queer community within Sydney thought that they were finally going to make they were making some progress throughout the 80s, and this crisis hits and people start dying left and right. And then at the same time, on the other side, I guess, of the AIDS crisis, which I guess we're not really on the other side of the AIDS crisis, but on the other side of it being that big a thing where there is no cure and people were really freaking out about it. There's like the community in Sydney at least got so into the idea of partying hard and really throwing it all out there because they lived through something like that people in Sydney kind of came back to them and were like, you guys seem like you fucking party hard. Like, what's your secret? And then that's when the moment of more cultural acceptance came back to them, I guess, which is kind of the moment that this movie was made in, more or less, which I thought that was an interesting documentary thing. But this is so my favorite part of this documentary that I saw, though, they brought Terence Stamp. They brought the three actors. They brought all three of them on a night out into Sydney, dressed in drag.
Oh, dressed in drag, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So this was like a rehearsal process once they got the three of them lined up and in Australia.
Yep. It was like a pre-bonding type thing.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Boot and rally, Hugo. Boot and rally.
Hugo's son is a actor now and has been in a bunch of stuff that you might have seen.
Isn't he also Samara Weaving's uncle, if I remember correctly?
Samara. Is he? I don't know. I was getting confused with them.
Yeah, I know his son has a different last name because him and his partner.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It's like Greenwood, I think it is.
Yeah, Harry Greenwood is the son.
Yes, that's it. Harry Greenwood.
Yeah. And Hugo is Samara's uncle, correct?
Nailed it.
I don't think I've knowingly seen anything with Harry Greenwood in it, though. Not knowingly. He's not he's not someone that's really well known or whatever, even here.
No, I mean he probably enjoys acting but doesn't have the raw charisma his dad has. It's like Brian Henson, very talented puppeteer.
No, he went to NIDA. So that's the thing about Australian film. I don't know what it's like in America and stuff, but there's loads of places you can go, loads of places you can train, all that. Australia, there isn't. We're just a tiny little blippy island. We have one famed art school, drama school, and that's NIDA. And so pretty much every big actor that has, been in anything overseas and stuff like that, they're all from NIDA. It's a very, very small community. So and lots of the families, they
probably kind of knows each other.
Yeah, and having your dad being Agent Smith and Elron probably helps too.
Yeah, 100%. And it's kind of and NIDA is very much it's built. I guess it's part of it is our British roots as well. With that, a lot of the film that gets produced here is the indie art house stuff, not mainstream. There's a very kind of snobbery around, what kind of films you do. Similar to and it's similar like that too when you're doing art and film and acting in England as well. There's that real snobbery around it. So I think we kind of took a bit of that on. So like that's one good thing out of that is that we get a lot of films made that are, you know, underground and indie and different topics like Priscilla that wouldn't have been made by a mainstream company whatsoever. So, and because the government's behind it as well, like we get a lot of really bizarre, obscure, like kind of films made that we wouldn't think. Like, I think none of you obviously know this or can see it, but I shared a film with the guys today. And that's a perfect example of how the fuck did that get made. And, you know, just like crazy. And yeah, it is. I think we kind of pride ourselves on our ability to bring things forward that are a bit unique and a bit off cuff.
Right. And again, that was one that like Dead mentioned when I was on. I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Oh, you haven't seen that? No, I know what that is. You know, but it was like, they knew all about it. And I was like, okay. Yeah, which is funny because I was rattling off all these Australian films, and you know, and it was like, oh, I've never even heard of that one.
Yeah, everyone here knows it. Yeah, so for sure, we definitely should do it one time. But it's there is a lot of stuff like that you just kind of like, whoa, and like me and my housemate have been watching a whole bunch of Aussie stuff recently that we saw as kids or not, and just going, this is so cooked. Like, how did this get? Like, what the fuck? Like, just thinking, like, man, like. Yeah, we kind of take it for granted, I think, how different Australian cinema is at points in time.
It's the same feeling I kind of had when we watched like Peter Jackson's old stuff.
I was just gonna say with like Brain Dead, Dead Alive, and absolutely.
And like so much of his like old movies.
They took the government money.
It was like
wow.
And then you see how controversial it was that like you know the people in New Zealand that are
that one guy Heavenly Creatures, that one dude was like really did I don't want this Jews for this. You know, like it was like feels like you'd be a buddy, but
like, this is what our dollars are, our New Zealand dollars are being spent on here. Like
yes.
Well, I mean, same thing happened in Canada with Cronenberg too. To a lesser degree.
Thank you, a bunch of dentists.
Yeah.
For filming his movies, for funding his movies.
Yes. Which I remember how upset they got whenever Porky's was a hit, because part of the reason why they get so much money back is if the movies were a flop.
Yeah, it had to lose money and ended up being a hit.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
and Cronenberg lost money.
It was a hit.
And then Porky's happened and ruined it for everybody.
That's the real producers, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's the real springtime for Hitler.
So the real springtime for Hitler was indeed Porky's. Yes.
Yeah. So do you want to touch on the real elephant in the room?
Oh,
Rita Repulsa.
So,
who actually is Rita Repulsa in the Power Rangers movie?
I wasn't sure until we started talking about it today because I didn't see that many reviews about. I wasn't really looking that deeply, but the Filipina sex worker that shoots ping pong balls out of her cooch. That's the original husband.
In case there was any ambiguity about who we were talking about. No, it's the one that shoots ping pong balls out of her.
Not her sister that shoots. Not her sister that shoots. You know,
her sister, the actuary, not so much. But
I feel like I have a social theory that I've had for a while, which is that whenever there's like too much cultural progressive acceptance of different groups. We always, as like a Western civilization, I guess, gravitate towards one group that you can kind of still beat up on. Like I consider it like methadone. It's methadone for bigotry, pretty much. And I think that it often ends up being immigrant for the reason that it the liberal-minded people, right? Not like conservatives that are fine with all the different kinds of bigotry, but like liberal, progressive-minded people think in their heads, well, like the people that I'm gonna shit on, like the foreigners, the sex workers, like these people that are really driven underground, they can go back to where they came from, and then that's a place where they could be accepted. So I don't have to accept them because the people that are like living inside of your actual community, or that were born here, it's like, well, I understand that they can't go anywhere, but there's still like I still have residual bigotry that I need to get rid of. And it's like, oh, here's some foreigners that like I'm sure there's a place that if they just left and went back to that place, that they'd be good there, but I don't feel comfortable with them there. That's really the kind of feeling that I get from the way that they treated the Filipina sex worker character, because every other character is given a story, a backstory, humanity, like emotional depth, and then it's just like, oh, here's a caricature. Here's a caricature that's like chingy chingy chong, ping pong pong or whatever, and then shoots ping pong.
She does go off on her own at the end.
What is that?
I'm just saying, like that's the extent. No, that's the extent.
That is far less offensive than what's in the actual movie, but yeah.
No. But I mean, I think I wanted to talk about.
I didn't do an accent.
No, you didn't. But I wanted to talk about it.
Let the record show. ... Yeah.
But I think that this part, this is a piece of social commentary that not only talks about the way, stereotypical, very old school regions of Australia, how they feel about Asian community. It's not about a Filipino, it's about Asians. That's the first thing I'll say, having grown up in an area just like that. So, and then second, it's more a piece of commentary around the fragility of like old Australian kind of masculinity. And like when I was growing up as a child, for example, like the fact that the girl, is shooting ping pong balls out of her cooch, I grew up thinking that Asian women were over sexual, that they could shoot ping pongs, that they were all involved in prostitution, all of those things prior to this film. It was something that was a huge influx in Australia when, at the end of obviously the wars and things like Vietnam, all those things, people brought back Asian wives, but also there was this huge influx of middle-aged men who couldn't find women, who were mostly shit dudes anyway, and the only way that they could do that was to get a mail order bride. And so there was this huge influx of mail order brides in Australia, and they all came from Asian countries. And there was this kind of, this real small-minded view and judgment on those cultures, because unfortunately in a lot of what we see in Australia from Asia is a lot of, very much stereotypical stigmatized women in trafficking or, in vulnerable work sort of and position and all of those kind of things. And so I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. And I don't think the film was being deliberately, racist or misogynist in this film. I think that they were just telling something as it was. So the film itself isn't. And I think that, they were shedding a light on something that is true. And in having been in Australian culture, that is exactly what it's like. Like I said, I was a kid and I thought that wasn't a shock. And when that came out in this film, people laughed. And it's like a collective laugh because we all grew up around people that have mail order brides this horrible stereotype about the kind of women that they are. So it was a funny joke, but it's really not funny. But it's also like they're both as sad as each other because you've got the woman and the man. I mean, in this film, at least the woman had a tiny bit of agency in the sense that she was like, fuck you, dude, I'm out. When in the situations I've been involved in, the women don't leave. Like, I have a lot of high school friends that had their fathers had mail order brides, and I met them, and they were all quite. And when I say all, we're talking like 2, 3. We're all very like violent, yelled, could not had bad English. You know what I mean? And like very stereotypical like this. And so I can see where this thing come from. But I think that it's very much like you take a little piece of that, and then when you put it in the public sphere, of course, it seems it's being as a huge statement. So I can see and I can see the problematic side of it as well. Did we need it in the film? No, 100% not. They could have not had that whole scene in there. It was not necessary. But
the one part, I guess, that's like when it's drag queens performing, everyone's kind of, in this royal.
Yeah, it was kind of that polarizing decision. Yeah.
And then the second is a woman, and then they're all like, yeah. And then it also shows, I guess, the outcast kind of awkwardness that Bob has in this community where nobody really respects him or takes him seriously. They're like, that weird guy, like I want to see the ping pong balls in your wife's cooch, like I don't want to see you, like I don't want to see whatever things you're into.
And as soon as she walks out, the way that they all behave, it's that pack kind of mentality, and it's that real again, it's that very like misogynist, like old school masculinity, and they're like, we don't want to see people dancing and singing, even if and I guarantee you in that town you had to put women doing the same thing that drag queens were doing, they would have behaved like animals and been wanting them to start stripping just like when the chicks. So it's that kind of really toxic view of female sexuality, And I think
I'm fascinated by the similarities between that and then in the beginning of the movie when they're dancing and the crowd is clearly bored inside of the Imperial Hotel or whatever, the place that is like the famous, drag, gay, queer space, and they're still heckling, the drag queens like that, and then hit them in the back of the head with a beer can or whatever. And like there's that same thing, like there's a line like they fucking shout out like "show me your pink bits" or whatever, which is like from the beginning I was like, oh man, this feels very Australian to me. Like, that cat call, like nobody would say that. Show us pink bits, love.
Yeah, show shit flat is probably the beef curtains.
Well, so what I'll say is this, and I don't sit around like finding things to dislike about movies that are like edgy. Quite the contrary. In fact, I think people do that are usually very tiresome people indeed. It took me out of the movie.
Bad movies.
It took me out of the movie, and it took me out of the movie in a way that, again, for something that did such a great job showing connection and disenfranchised people, marginalized communities finding common ground, things along those lines, and really treated with such respect. There was something about, again, having the me so horny type like dialogue. If she had just spoken like a normal person, I probably wouldn't mind it so much.
Yeah.
But like this super affected, like 1950s dad version of what Asian people are like.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Even when
not like I'm like, oh, that's offensive and shouldn't exist. I mean, it took me out of the movie and it made the movie worse for me.
Yeah. And there's also like there's the old stereotype where it's like, oh, you have to keep the liquor locked up because the Asian.
No, they go wild with it. Yeah.
Any kind of, once they get the liquor in them, like they're like animals, and she's like literally acting like an animal to get the liquor out of their form, and it's like it was hard. And I wasn't gonna.
Ping-Pong balls came out. It was just like, what the hell?
I wasn't gonna bring it up if everybody else was like, hey, whatever. But like, it felt very out of place. It felt like the thing that it ruined for me, I think, is that it was so.
I don't mind the actual ping pong balls. Like that scene with like her. It would have been hilarious. Like if it was just that. It would have been like, oh, that's hilarious. And like the react and like they got upstaged by this. Of course, that makes sense. I feel like I saw that in like Ace Ventura or something. But like still, I mean, it would still
that
work.
Time it was a drag queen.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's not get started there.
Hey, that guy has a dick. That's the joke.
That's the joke. That is the joke, people.
The whole scene just leaves like a really like a huge sense.
It's like it's from a worse movie. You know what I mean? It's like this scene just came in from a different movie.
Yeah, well, like I've seen this film so many times, and like so many times in my lifetime, and like watching it last night, as it was approaching this scene, as it was approaching, I was already recoiling, like knowing that it was coming, like as in this like
my thing is that it handles the the indigenous community. Right, like it handles them
incredibly
really well,
And I'm left with such a nice feeling, like watching that, and then that's the people that help them, and there's like this solidarity between these two extremely marginalized communities in the society, and I feel very good about that, and I feel warm, and I like "I Will Survive." I like that song, so that brought it up too, and I like the didgeridoo with it they added to it, so I was left with that feeling, and then that exact warmness just kind of left me. That part of it, at least, it feels like they just undid like a part of the movie that they did very, very well. And I'm like, come on, and it doesn't ruin like the rest of it, but it feels like there was an extra part of the movie that you could probably argue that like it didn't need the indigenous scene either if you like plot wise. But I'm happy that it was there, and it ruins like a thing that's like, wow, this is like a cherry on top of a very nice movie that's humanizing all these different communities and really makes me feel like Australia is a great place that I'd love to visit. It's nice, like
I think it'd be more respectful though if they had gone to Northern Territory and not had an Aboriginal scene. I think it would have been that would have been really frowned upon in Australia to do this in their land and whatever, and then not cover them. I mean,
there's I don't know how to pronounce the there's another canyon that they wanted to have them climb.
Uluru.
Yeah,
Uluru is it's now called Uluru, which is what the world knows it as, but it's Ayers Rock. That's the one I was telling you guys about that I've climbed and stood on the top of.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Before it was not allowed. So they said no to that because of like like cultural reasons and stuff like that. So they said.
Although
no,
I do like the line. I'd like to climb King's Canyon as a queen. Like I like.
Yeah.
I like
Oh
that.
right, yeah, that's good. That's a good line.
Yeah, what was it? A cock and a frock on a
Oh,
rock?
yeah. It's
On a
a
rock,
cock
yeah,
on
yeah.
a rock and a frock. Or,
Yeah.
I also like that they fully embrace the camp side of the queen in this a bunch of times. Like, moving away from the other scene. I'm glad we touched on it. I like that they embrace like the camp side of like the queen and like the royal family. Like a couple of times in this movie, they're like, like when
Charles came out good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but and then they named the other kid that isn't Prince Andrew that I didn't even remember existed. Like, that's the responsible one. They're like, he's a little bit of a mischievous one. I was like, what about fucking Prince Andrew?
Nobody knew in the 90s. It was too long ago.
Well, it was before the whole tampon thing came out with Prince Charles, with those leaked phone calls.
What up,
Tampon
the
came
chat.
out and leaked. So again, the minstrel show, everybody.
But yeah, you want to do
some people call it comment. I would love to do Letterboxd one-liners. Yes, Letterboxd, of course, is a social media site, a place for film lovers talk at, with, and to each other about the films that they loved, maybe the films that they didn't love, maybe the films that they excessively thirst post for multiple identities. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is best expressed succinctly. Everybody keep it pretty short. Right, but it's a bottom-up democracy, not just Siskel's and Eberts of the world getting to have their say. Everyone gets to chime in and opine, and this is what this bit is. Collect them together, put them on screen, we react to them. These are the Letterboxd one-liners for Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Let's go. A dog named Herpes is iconic, and I cannot explain why.
Because you gotta wait for him to heal. That is such a good line.
So good.
And then the look that Bernadette gives, like the look that they give fucking Bob, it's like it starts off their relationship on the perfect like worst foot. Because it's always in a movie like this, right? Like the person you don't get along with, you're like, this person's kind of a weirdo. Like they're gonna end up falling for. Like that's gonna happen. So
Enemies to lovers pro. Why did it go silent?
Australians really do be driving a bus through the desert under dire circumstances.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. That's just a statement of fact. They
do be doing that, mate.
I would give anything to wear the ostrich costume.
I picked the almost like fucking Green Lantern-esque green dress that he's wearing in this because I feel like that's such a great supervillain look.
It's kind of Green Lantern looking. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I didn't think about that.
In the darkest day and the brightest night.
I will survive. Sounds better with didgeridoo.
And with the indigenous chanting behind them, it's like
Yeah.
Definitely improved it for sure. They really had a tanning bed in the bus.
Yes, they're in the desert. They need a tanning bed.
They have a lot of deeply inessential things in that bus. You're right.
You could literally jump on top of the bus and just tan, and then you know what? Yeah. But you need to get the perfect at least if you're Guy Pearce's character, you need to get the perfect not too orange, but not too not too burnt. Like you got to get the perfect thing down.
Got to get the color right. Who put a whole bunch of nuanced and sensitive character drama in my Asian lady ping-pong pussy film?
Oh, fuck it up.
I don't need to know your life story. Just shoot those balls out of your cooch.
But I love that you guys. The cooch is so not an Aussie word.
I need to assert my Americanism.
Exactly. Mad Max, Fierce Road.
They are fierce indeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Two fierce queens and a beautiful woman.
Honestly, I would love to see a Mad Max crossover with Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Abaturd.
Yes. That was
yes. Abaturd.
I don't think I'd ever pick a turd out of anybody I look up to.
Okay. Duly noted.
There was one more that didn't load that I'm trying to find.
Oh no. I was gonna say, but Indian Abaturd was a choice. But
oh, here, wait, let me pull it up.
This is the encore. This is the prestige.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a good one. I don't even remember.
No, this one was perfect, and then somehow it didn't load up as a. Here, let me do it like this.
Performance anxiety. I get it. It happens everywhere. All right, here we go. Ready? Put Furiosa behind the wheel of that bus.
Yes.
And those aren't.
I just liked that was clearly recent. Like
yeah, it's like from this week. Those are Letterboxd one-liners for Priscilla, the Adventures of Priscilla Queen of the Desert. Please follow the show at our Letterboxd HQ account at Movie Night Extra, where we're logging all of the episodes. We're logging all the movies that we cover as stories and additional bonus content for you to read and interact with on there on Letterboxd. Follow us at Movie Night Extra. At Always Flacco is Forrest over there. Kangaroo meet anyone? That he can.
That couple with the dead kangaroo in there.
It's just kind of a throwaway, and there's a dead kangaroo. All right, like you do. You know, it's like.
Well, is it the same one that's on the Spick later? We don't know.
Hopefully not. There's some flies on that one. That's pretty raunchy looking. Anyway.
Well, I mean, there's flies everywhere in Australia.
Okay, fine. Can I get through this, please? I am the didgeridoo Gloria Gaynor at Conan Neutron. I am watch out the highbrow, the midbrow, the populous fair. You can follow me along for the Criterion Challenge, which I am back at. Film school dropouts, all that good stuff. Follow me. I think KT said she said Jared first, but she said I was one of the best Letterboxd accounts she follows right after Jared. So, which she has to say that they're collaborators. So,
yes.
You know. At J. Andrew World, the fourth Lars is watching all the weirdest stuff, so you don't have to.
Laws, and laws.
That's where they got the bus from, right? If I remember right.
Yeah, it was the three Larses.
The three
I
Larses.
love
Inside your three Larses.
It's such a weird throwaway detail that the one thing inside of the bus when they get it is the Swedish flag. And he's like, I got it from laws, and laws. Like,
yeah. The bus, they just launched a $2.2 million campaign to have the bus refurbished like a month and a half ago.
Well, they had a whole thing first, right, where they lost the bus and they were trying to find it, and they finally found it impounded in like England or something crazy.
Yeah.
Inside you are three Larses: Lars von Trier, Lars Mikkelsen, and Lars Ulrich. Thank you.
And J. Andrew Lars.
Exactly. He's there. He's logging Doctor Who episodes. Occasionally, he's logging.
Because I'm Larson in charge.
He's like. That would be the name if those four dudes had a podcast. Lord help us. It would be called Larson in Charge. Yeah.
Classic reality show, but it's like the Real World style where they put the four Larses together in a house, and it's like they have to kind of like they just follow it. They're like, I hope there's some conflict, and there is. There's inevitably conflict. They're all trying to get the right the last herring or something.
The last herring. The Last Herring is the name of the last episode. Renee Ruin is on Letterboxd as well. You can follow her. I believe it's just Renee Ruin, right? I should know this at this point. But you don't since you don't review stuff much, you don't ever show up in the feed. So
I need to drop. I feel like I want to start just dropping like one-liners and that's it.
That's what everyone else does. Have you seen Andy? Like it's usually some unrelated thing that's nothing to do with the movie that was in there for like 3 seconds.
Yeah,
works for him.
All right, don't tee him up before the plugs.
All right. Anyway, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
He did a real good job on the plugs this week already. Let's try to keep it.
Okay, all right, I'm fine. I'm just saying.
Tonight's podcast is brought to you by Jebiga, a Balkan Rakia spirit plum brandy that's bringing Serbia to the American shores in an authentic and appreciative way. Care of Billy Gould, bassist for Faith No More, and Rakia appreciator. Rakia is a traditional spirit enjoyed at weddings, funerals, and life events. However, more and more, it's being enjoyed everywhere on a night out with friends or as a casual drink. Get a bottle today in liquor stores and bars across America. Go to yabiga.com to see where it's available near you.
That's right. So, fourth Lars in charge. Please take us away with the plugs.
All right. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do those YouTube things like comment, subscribe, hit that bell. And of course, the big ask is to watch the video to the end. That allows other movie fans to find our content. And that also allows you to hear that great Conan Neutron song. If you're over on Twitch, please do the Twitch things. Throw us a sub. If you happen to have a Amazon Prime account, you can subscribe for free. It does not kind of cost you anything extra. But it actually helps out the show. So if you do any of that or all of that stuff, please do. Find us on social media. We're on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and now TikTok. So you can get your short little bursts of us over there on TikTok. Find us.
Bold words for the minstrel show. Short bursts, huh? Okay. All right. Back at it. Sorry.
All right.
Hashtag not sorry. Honestly, sometimes I just do things that crack Renee up, and you know what? I'm good at my job.
I was waiting for it. I'm just like, let's derail Andy. It's happening.
Exactly.
The minstrel show for months. Come on.
Right. And we have a Discord. So find us on our Discord and join in our conversations. We'll welcome you.
It's become a thing. I can't.
That wasn't even funny. That was just like it was just stating facts. We will welcome you. We're very welcoming.
I know, but that's what I mean.
Did I throw him off by getting up?
It's really hot. I think it's actually me. I think I ruined.
Oh no! You clearly don't watch the show regularly.
But
to be fair, neither do I. Though.
Yeah. Yeah, anytime he's not on here, he's not watching. But we can, if you do need more Conan in your life, you can check out Protonic Reversal, which has been listed right behind him this entire time. If you couldn't remember the name of it, right there. People.
Right, it is literally behind me. Protonic Reversal. I had Matt Hall and Kip from the Red Scare, not the podcast, the post-hardcore band, who are hilarious. I knew Matt already from.
Are you sure? Never.
Yes. New Brutalism, Manhandle, and the Obstructures Guitar Company, and I knew he was a pretty clever dude. But those guys, they could basically be a comedic duo. It's a very entertaining episode, and we talked all about them being back, playing basically young person's music at a age where they are not young anymore, and it was a good episode. So that is the most recent episode, and there's a bunch of good stuff coming up. Little to none of which I actually can tell you about still, unfortunately. Sorry. But Dwayne Dennison from Jesus Lizard later in August. I know that. But for a real episode, not just for that 10-minute hit that was on the 10-year episode. But ProtonicReversal.com for that. Anywhere you find your podcast, $1 a month, patreon.com/ProtonicReversal will get you these episodes sooner and help support the show. So if you got a buck, there you go.
And of course,
you got a buck, and you could use it for my show or for something else. I don't know. You could go to the sex shop, a beast with $2.
You can use it for a pack of gum, Jack.
Listen, Jack. Exactly.
And if you need more Conan, you can also find him on This Is Revolution for that unnamed show.
Yeah, it's in the Pop Matters banner, but come up with a name for it, please. We haven't been able to, but we're doing 1994 tomorrow, so one of my favorite years. So.
Yeah, that's a great year.
The year this movie came out.
Was it? Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, absolutely. So,
yeah, and tour dates are done for now, but you can still go to if you want to check out Conan's music. You can check out his band Conan, Neutron, and Secret Friends at neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Yep. A lot of merch there. If you're looking at T-shirts, it's what's available.
Right, exactly. Limited sizes for some things. We need to remake almost everything. It's
yes.
We have a bunch of stuff we're going to be announcing. I don't know, next month or so for the fall. But it's going to be a slow summer for Secret Friends. But we had a good run with Part Chimp and whatnot. So
yeah. Yes.
I get these podcasts in. We got to get more room for time for podcasts.
Exactly. And of course, mention Caterwall, the festival that just finished up.
Mm-hmm. Which your host Forrest here has been dutifully putting together full set videos of all the great bands that played. So if you missed out, or if you just want to relive the experience, you can hit up the Caterwall YouTube page.
I like it because all the times when I got bumped by somebody, which was pretty frequently in the first couple of days before I found a perch to stand on, I get to go, I pretend I didn't get bumped, and then I
right just do like a cut. Yeah, absolutely. It's masterful work. It's good.
Yeah, I know. And I was just watching the Ganser one, which is fantastic.
That's the most recent one. Yeah, the Ganser, which was very animated.
I got bumped the most.
Oh my God, like some of it by her.
Yeah, some of it by the front person of the band. Yeah, absolutely. If you're remotely interested in weird music, check that out and subscribe while you're at it, because we're trying to do more stuff with that YouTube page.
Yeah, definitely check that out. And of course, Christina's not here, as you can tell by her not being here. Nor has Godzilla graced us with. Oh
yeah.
But
Godzilla was like, it's Godzilla -1, and that -1 is me. I'm out, bitches.
But please check out Christina.
There we go.
Please check out Christina over on Twitch and support her Patreon if you can. And that brings us though to Renee.
It's quite the pitch. Support it if you can. Yeah, all right. I will.
No, I was just wondering why I have Dan from the internet still on my thing.
Maybe she should show up and do her own pitch. You know what I mean?
Oh,
no, I'm just saying, like, you're leaving it to Andy's shoulders.
Yeah, you get what you're given.
You don't get nothing. You don't get nothing around here.
But Renee is the host of The Night Shift, which
are you looking at her for validation? Yes, she is. I can tell you. Yeah.
Well, he's looking to see if she switched to the day shift yet.
Oh,
morning shift. You know,
with Bonnie Burton and Jenna Hayes.
I feel like if I was to animate you during these Andy, you would have like a bead of sweat, like a single bead of sweat the entire time.
You know what I would love to see? You know, I don't know how to do it, and if anyone knows, please message any of us to let them tell me or just message me. I want to know how to do it. But you know how on Instagram and stuff, when there's a video and then the person's face goes woo, like real big. That's what I would like to do to Andy in these calls.
There would be a lot of those moments.
Face go huge, and then the beads of sweat, like it'd be amazing. Thank you.
See, my thing is that by the end of it, Andy looks like the Key and Peele image where he's just like.
Right, just like endless sweat. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Renee, what's happening over our night show?
So all that you like don't even. What do you got? Hey, you got a thing? What is it? You doing something over there? What are you up to? It's like a Norm Macdonald bit. What is this?
Listen here, Andy, you mullet.
You fucking mullet. Yeah, now you've stumped me. No,
now you've forgotten exactly.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing nothing. No. Night shift is on a mini break at the moment. Because Bonnie obviously broke her wrist and hurt her hip and her leg and basically everything. And Jenna has not been great either. So yeah, we're sort of just I'm just waiting for the both of them to heal and be better. And then we'll be back. So hopefully that won't be too much longer.
Well, Andy can dress in drag and try to be one of them if you want. He doesn't mind doing it.
So I'm available for more movie nights, obviously, in that case.
Yeah, Andy possibly like, it's me, Jenna Hayes.
Ooh, it's hi, Jenna Hayes.
Then we'll lose like 50,000 billion.
Yeah, all your subscribers suddenly stop subscribing.
I was just watching Red Rocket, and they name dropped Jenna Hayes in the middle of the scene in Red Rocket, and I was like, I was doing the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the.
Yeah. You did do Girl Walks Home at Night though, which I love.
Yes, that was the last one
that
we
recent
did.
episode.
Yeah, that's the most recent one. Yeah, correct.
That movie rocks. I'm gonna do that in this show.
Yeah, it'll be good. It's a good one. Definitely a good one. Yeah, so hopefully we'll be back. Yeah. Or
it's a good time to catch up on back episodes.
Yeah, and also look at back episodes. And maybe come on here a bit more, but also maybe do a special episode just on my own channel. So yeah, we'll see. I'm open to anything at the moment.
Well, Andy and his finest frock are waiting for you.
Oh, it's a cock in a frock on a rock.
And a frock on a rock. Amazing. No notes. Great line.
But Renee, do you have some final thoughts for this classic Aussie?
Yeah. So to clarify for everyone, when you're trying to say Aussie, you think of it. It is an O and a Z. O-Z-Z-I-E.
Okay, well, I get confused and I start thinking about we're going down on the crazy train.
Because it just makes us laugh endlessly when people say Aussie. It's like, what the fuck are you even saying?
Mm.
Aussie. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Okay.
It's a thing. But yeah, I understand how difficult it is for people to understand our language and slang because we do.
I think you don't understand how difficult it is for people to care.
No, because it's just like words are very different.
Like people can't even pronounce Nevada or Oregon correctly.
Yeah,
if they're like west of Colorado, it's fundamentally impossible. It's okay.
Colorado?
That's in this country.
Yeah, true that.
The
Oregon.
You got to go down to Oregon.
Yeah.
The French,
or how about Washington?
The French city of Oregon.
Nevada. No, that's wrong. Stop saying
Which, by the way, that's how they say it in Boston is Washington.
Washington.
Washington. That's weird. Anyway,
anyway, your final thoughts on Priscilla Queen of the Desert? Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's such a iconic movie, and it brings me a lot of nostalgia. Like watching it again last night. Yeah, it's just there's I have a lot of feelings, but yeah, I think that it's just I love the way that a lot of, kind of earlier, especially Aussie films have this way of kind of incorporating kind of hard lives, with larrikinism and kind of like this kind of, adversity, trying to tell a tough story, but still with that really great kind of Aussie humor. And I guess that kind of, our love for really self-deprecating jokes and, just taking the piss out of everything and everyone. And we have a really good knack of being able to do that really well, like while juggling different balls in the air. So I think this is a good example of that. And I just think it was a really iconic moment in Australian history in general, let alone Australian film history. So for me, it always holds like a kind of unique place. I think it's a great film. I really like Guy Pearce and Hugo Weaving a lot. And Terence Stamp, this was my first introduction to him when I saw the original. So I was never really
interesting.
I never knew much about him growing up. But the other two, yeah, of course, they were just household names. We all knew them. So this was really cool seeing them in an earlier kind of their breakout film.
I like Guy Pearce being like, nobody recognized me here. That was the good part about going to the drag. It's like, were they going to?
Right as this film came out,
Yeah.
A film that was very, very popular called Dating the Enemy came out. And that was an Australian film where it's like a rom-com and he's the lead in that with Claudia Carbon. So it's like at that time he was taking a big up in like women's. So it would have been, totally. They would have crossed over.
All right, I guess he's right on the line. He's right on the line with that one.
He would have been in your Clio magazines and your Cosmo magazines and all that kind of stuff, cover guy. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. But yes, yeah. But yeah, I really love them, and I think that it was and I just love that they didn't try to. They did a good job of minus the scene of obviously Ping-Pong, but like. They did a pretty good job of juggling, some of the really bad systematic problems within kind of Australian isolated culture, and kind of not making it too, going too far with it. So I kind of like that about that, minus that one scene.
Yeah, I was thinking about that with America and like, because I'm always thinking about America. No, but what a movie what a version of this made in Hollywood be able to have that sense of menace and bigotry and stuff without like seriously injuring, if not killing one of the characters, which is there's a long history of like.
There's no way. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
and it's like
boys don't cry.
Well, it's like there's a certain level where it's Australia had one big mass shooting and then banned guns, and in America everybody has a gun, so it's kind of hard not to. In some I feel like it's a very different cultural like darkness, I think. Right. But
we Australians have a unique knack for dealing with dark issues while laughing or smiling at the same time. It's a whole part of our take the piss culture, I think. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things we've got
so dark so fast. Even somebody with their hands, right? Like taking it, like they had to handle it. They had to pull it away just at the moment where it's frightening enough that you're like, oh shit, this could have gotten really real, but not like so far that you're like, this just ruined the mood of the movie. I feel like in the 80s and 90s especially, there's a lot of movies where like everything's going fine and it's kind of whimsical, and then all of a sudden someone just gets killed, and then it's like this got real like,
To be fair, so did everything in the 90s, but anyway. I digress.
But yeah, but Renee, is that all your final thoughts, or do you have?
Yes. Okay. That's it.
Andy, final thoughts.
This movie
on a block, on a rock, in a frog.
Could you with a frock? Could you on a rock?
Okay. Can I talk about colors?
Could you do it during the plugs? Could you wearing Uggs?
So yeah, Andy, come on, push through.
Yes. It is a love letter to Australia, but at the same time is also a place on Maxfield Parrish's use of colors, which I think is stunning because I just love Maxfield Parrish. But those rich blues of the sky, the rich orange of the ground, just being opposite colors, the way they vibrate against each other, and then being cut across it with the silver and pink bus. It's incredible, with the stuff flailing off of it being also like just a bold primary color. It's everything about the use of colors is wonderful, and it's all the colors are bright, no matter like how dark this film gets. They really understood like how to make this thing pop, and they don't make movies that look like this. I mean, like everything's all color.
They know how to make some things pop. Am I right?
Right. Oi.
Yeah, pop like a ping pong ball. This movie, the colors.
Also,
No, but it especially stands out because of the desert, because of like the backdrop. So yeah.
Well, and there's that final sequence that's so over the top, but is so beautifully colored, where they finally climb up the King's Canyon, and there's the the shots from the aerial shots and the shots of them, and they're walking through, and it's so like the colors are so vibrant.
Sunset,
and they're just like,
and yeah,
I love I cracked up so hard at the final, like, okay, so what do we do now? And it's like, well, I kind of want to go home. And it's like,
yeah. He's like, all right, I guess we climbed it. All right, it's over here. Okay. There it is. We did it. Wave the flag.
Conan, final thought.
Yeah, somehow both catty and deeply humane. I think this is a landmark in gay cinema. I'm glad we closed off the month with it. And I think, as I said earlier, I think the trick of the movie is it gets you to care about these deeply flawed and hurt characters, even as they give you every reason not to do that. And as far as the plot goes, it's a road movie. It's fish out of water, right? Yeah, we've all seen the tropes before, but as far as representation goes, it's everything, and it's a pleasure to cover it, especially with our chief Aussie correspondent, Renee Rowan, who we love deeply.
Yeah. All right. Well, this movie snatched my wig.